Did you know that the self-preservation bias played a massive role in one of the biggest sports scandals of all time? In 2012, Lance Armstrong, a former professional cyclist, was stripped of all his titles and banned from the sport after it was discovered that he had been using performance-enhancing drugs throughout his career. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Armstrong repeatedly denied any involvement in doping and even sued those who accused him of using performance-enhancing drugs. This extreme behavior is a clear example of the self-preservation bias in action. The self-preservation bias is so powerful that it can even change one's memories without them realizing it, leading to false beliefs and actions that further reinforce the bias. It's been suggested that Armstrong may have also passed a lie detector test due to the bias's ability to alter memories, highlighting just how difficult it can be to break free from its grip. Hey rational rebels! Welcome back to the arena of reason, where we train our minds to spot cognitive pitfalls. This is Chris from Critical Conditioning, where we strive for cognitive precision and free our brains from that mental prison. Today's episode is about the self-preservation bias, a powerful force that affects our reasoning abilities and decision-making processes. By understanding this bias, we can improve our analytical skills and avoid falling into cognitive traps. We'll explore what the self-preservation bias is, how it works, and the ways it can influence our perceptions and actions. We'll also provide practical tips on how to recognize and overcome this bias to make more objective decisions. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified of our latest episodes. And if you want to support our channel, you can donate through the PayPal link in the description. You can really make a difference by donating to our PayPal account. Every little bit counts and helps us to keep improving and expanding our reach. Self-preservation bias fun fact. The fable of two crabs in the bucket can be interpreted as an example of self-preservation bias. In the fable, the two crabs are trying to climb out of a bucket to escape, but instead of working together, they end up pulling each other down whenever one of them tries to climb out. This behavior can be seen as a manifestation of the self-preservation bias, as each crab is primarily focused on their own survival and is not willing to help the other, even if it means both of them might have a better chance of escaping. Let's dive into strengthening our minds by exploring the fascinating concept of the self-preservation bias and what research has to say about it. A notable study conducted at the University of Michigan revealed that people tend to be more cautious and risk-averse when facing potential losses compared to potential gains. In fact, individuals are around 4 times more likely to choose the option that minimizes risk when facing a small potential loss, such as losing money, even if it means giving up a greater reward. This study highlights how the self-preservation bias influences our decision-making, and how we prioritize minimizing losses over maximizing gains. Another way in which the self-preservation bias manifests itself is through our social connections. Studies have shown that individuals tend to associate with others who share their values, beliefs, or backgrounds. This behavior can be attributed to the self-preservation bias, as we seek to surround ourselves with individuals who validate and reinforce our beliefs and values, rather than challenge them. However, it's important to note that we can learn and grow more when forming connections with individuals who have different perspectives and challenge our beliefs, yet we often prioritize self-preservation over growth. Furthermore, a long-term study revealed how strong the self-preservation bias can be, to the extent that individuals are willing to sacrifice their own time, energy, or money in order to maintain the socio-economic gap between themselves and their peers. This bias can lead to acts of sabotage or bullying, as seen in a study on workplace bullying. Researchers found that high achievers or competent individuals were often targets of bullying, perpetrated by colleagues who felt threatened or jealous of their success. The self-preservation bias can have both positive and negative implications, but it's important to recognize when it's hindering our growth and ability to form meaningful connections. By acknowledging and challenging our biases, we can expand our perspectives and enhance our decision-making skills. The self-preservation bias is a tendency for people to prioritize their own well-being and safety, even at the expense of others. However, not everyone is equally affected by this bias. Some individual differences can influence the degree to which a person is affected by the self-preservation bias. For example, individuals with higher levels of neuroticism may be more prone to the self-preservation bias, as they may be more sensitive to potential threats or losses. Conversely, individuals with higher levels of openness to experience may be less affected by the self-preservation bias, as they may be more open to taking risks and exploring new ideas. Age can also play a role, with younger individuals typically being less risk-averse than older individuals. Studies have shown that individuals with higher levels of education and income tend to be less affected by the self-preservation bias, as they may have greater access to resources and a broader perspective on potential risks and rewards. Gender differences have also been observed, with men being more likely to take risks and women being more risk-averse. However, these differences may be influenced by societal expectations and cultural norms. Overall, the self-preservation bias is a complex phenomenon that is influenced by a range of individual differences and contextual factors. Understanding these factors can help us better understand how the bias operates and how to mitigate its negative effects. I want to know your opinion, guys. I have witnessed situations over and over again where individuals claimed that their job was safe from automation or AI, only to find out a month later that they were wrong and their jobs were replaced by AI. This phenomenon is clearly attributed to the self-preservation bias, where individuals tend to downplay potential threats to their own position in order to protect their own interests. Have you ever seen something similar happen? Have you witnessed people falling for the self-preservation bias in your own life or work? Have you seen people make predictions with unwavering confidence due to their bias, only to be confronted with reality shortly after? The self-preservation bias is a cognitive bias that can be observed in many aspects of our everyday lives. Here are 5 examples. 1. Refusing to listen to feedback. When we receive feedback that is critical of our performance or behavior, we may become defensive and refuse to listen. This is because we want to protect our self-image and avoid the discomfort of admitting our shortcomings. 2. Overestimating our abilities. We often overestimate our abilities and underestimate the risks involved in our actions. For example, we may drive faster than we should, thinking that we can handle it, or we may take on more responsibilities at work than we can manage, thinking that we can handle the workload. 3. Blaming others. People often blame others for their own mistakes or failures, rather than accepting responsibility. This can be attributed to the self-preservation bias, where individuals protect their own ego and self-worth by avoiding criticism or negative feedback. 4. Resisting change. We may resist change because it threatens our sense of stability and familiarity. This is particularly true in situations where the change could potentially affect our position or status. 5. Justifying our mistakes. When we make mistakes, we may be quick to justify them and blame external factors, rather than taking responsibility for our actions. This helps to protect our self-image and avoid the discomfort of admitting our faults. 6. Ignoring evidence that contradicts our beliefs. We may ignore evidence that contradicts our beliefs because it threatens our sense of identity and worldview. This is particularly true in situations where our beliefs are closely tied to our social identity. These are just a few examples of how the self-preservation bias can manifest in our everyday lives. By becoming more aware of this bias, we can better understand our own behavior and make more informed decisions. The self-preservation bias can be challenging to spot in ourselves and others, but there are some telltale signs to look for. For example, if you notice that you or someone else is overly dismissive of potential threats or risks to a particular position or belief, this could be an indication of the bias in action. Additionally, if someone is resistant to change or new ideas that could potentially threaten their status quo, this could also be a sign of self-preservation bias. Another technique is to focus on and be aware of your emotions. If you feel emotions like fear of loss or fear of status, it can be a good sign that the self-preservation bias is at work. Moreover, if something happened that you resisted or didn't like, this could also indicate the presence of this bias. One technique to help overcome the self-preservation bias is to seek feedback from others and to actively listen to their perspectives. Additionally, being aware of the bias and actively monitoring your own thoughts and behaviors can also help to overcome it. As always, thank you for tuning into Critical Conditioning. If you enjoyed today's episode about the self-preservation bias and found it informative, please consider supporting the channel by donating to our PayPal account. Your contribution will help us continue to create valuable content and improve the quality of our productions. Every little bit helps, and we are grateful for any amount you can spare. You can find the link to our PayPal account in the description below. And if you're unable to donate, don't worry, liking, subscribing, and sharing this video with your friends and family goes a long way in supporting us. So please, show your support in whatever way you can. Together, we can build a community of rational rebels who value critical thinking and reasoning. Keep your mind sharp, rational rebels, until the next time we meet in the arena of reason. This is Chris from Critical Conditioning signing off.